Well, welcome everybody. Sorry we can't see you, but I just want to give you an overview of well, RISD in general, our department, and particularly our MFA program. And Carly's here to also be answering questions from a student perspective, so really happy about that. And I'm happy to follow up with any questions today, but also in the future between now and if you decide to apply, happy to talk further. So this is just an overview of, if you haven't been here before, overview of looking past RISD Beach, which you can't see very much, which is a lawn, out to Carr House, the old Baptist church down towards downtown. So this is the RISD campus. Main Street, which has on the left is the Metcalf building, which is where RISD started as a factory, weaving textile factory before it was an art school. And that houses sculpture and ceramics and glass, among other departments. And it has our jacquard loom in that industrial building. Then we have the RISD Museum, which is an extraordinary resource, encyclopedic museum with the curators, very accessible. That's one of the, something we interact with a lot with our students. And then there's the bank building that it has one of the 3D stores, looking down to downtown, and across the opposite side of North Main Street, Market House. We're on this is College Building. This is where most of the textile equipment and studio classes are held. It's a very old building, very quirky and eccentric, but we do love it. And then we're right on the river, right where these two rivers meet to become the Providence River. It's a canal right by this by RISD. It's really beautiful. And then looking across the canal to downtown, you can see a map here of the RISD campus. That's the entrance to College Building, but the RISD campus is centered around College Building, where we are, in the museum. There's and a cluster of other studio and administrative buildings, and then in the downward right-hand side, that's the architecture and landscape architecture and ID kind of programs. And then across the river, you see a big orange building. That's Fleet Library, another incredible resource. And then the grad studios and buildings are to the far lower left, but it's only a 5-minute walk. Trying to move on to the next slide here. Yeah, so this is coming into College Building, the kind of where the main offices are. We have extraordinary equipment in our department. So it's really a deep dive into understanding the skills of textiles and using it as learning them, and then using it as an expressive medium. So this is our loom room. And then we have a Dobby loom, which is a 24 harness computer interface where you're learning, if you're studying weaving, deep structure with the 24 harness, but also you're still hand weaving. So you're still able to really play with materiality. This is our jacquard loom. So these are all the weaving, the hand looms, the Dobby looms, and then this industrial. This is what is on a factory floor, but we have one in our department. Students learn how to program it. They bring the yarns to the machine and work with the technician to weave out their designs. Our yarn library. We have all kinds of other equipment, like support equipment, like cone winding machines. The dye lab, we have 2 dye labs which serve everybody. People dye their fabrics, people dye their yarns. As you can see here, one of the students space dyeing the yarns, and then using it in their knitted fabrics to get this variegated pattern within it. Our silk screens, one of our 2 silk screen studios and exposure units. This is in the surface area. The surface area also has a digital fabric printing machine, as well as a digital embroidery machine. We actually have this large one and a small one. So students might digitally print out fabric and then screen print on top of it. This is one of our recent grads installations, the architectural installations. And then in our knitting area, we have double and single bed knitting machines that are manual. And then so there's a single bed, and then the double bed, and then the advanced programming is the stole machines, the industrial machines. And we have 2 of those at different gauges. So here you can see one of the former grad students knitting coming out of the stole machine. So they get their ideas, they program it, they bring yarns, they iterate at the machine. And then that particular fabric was then also used in combination with felt, like laser cut felt. And the fabric was designed with a thermoplastic yarn and a wool, so they could literally melt the thermoplastic yarn onto the little tabs of felt to create this 3D textile for a wearable piece. And then this is also off the stole machine. It's a spacer fabric. It's probably like, 4 inches deep. So people really experiment on what they can get out of a machine, not just something you'd wear like a sweater on your body, but like this would be an industrial product for acoustical panels and various other possibilities for spacer fabrics. Again, a lot of iteration. These are knit samples and like really testing out your ideas and then moving forward to a larger project and learning structure, materiality. So some of the resources at school-wide are the library. We have the Fleet Library, really an extraordinary collection of books. But also we have all the students have access to the Brown University, which is our neighbor, to all their libraries, which have another great art library, science libraries, literature, so there's just every book you could possibly want pretty much is all very close to your availability to have it in hand. Another view of the Fleet Library. The Nature Lab is also a school-wide resource, lots of objects to observe, but there's also microscopes, which people get trained on if they're interested. There's also like a maker lab, dealing with sustainable sort of materials that developing, and a lot of research and grants are done through the Nature Lab. So students interested in that aspect often will join a course that engages with the Nature Lab or special research projects. The RISD Museum is, like I said, is encyclopedic, and the Costume and Textile Department has a wealth of objects. And students can make individual appointments with the curator to look at specific things that to like further their own research. The classes also like schedule this was from a visit this fall where the curator brought out like 24 textiles and we looked at them in relation to color and pattern and materiality for that class. This is downtown. This is the Fletcher building, which it houses many of the grad departments, just grad studios, I should say. Within that is RISD CoWorks, which is another shared resource at RISD with specialized computerized equipment that students can get trained on and or classes engage with. And this is the CIT studio. This is where Textiles, we're up on the 5th floor. So not the arch buildings, the one right below, that's the studios our grads are in. And this is like coming off the elevator, looking down the hall to the textile. I don't have really great pictures. So there's the grads decide how they want to arrange the studio every year. So they each get a small personal space within. It's an open plan. What I don't have is images of the looms and there's a lot of equipment in that studio so people can work there and not always have to go to college building for the larger equipment. There's a print studio in the basement shared with the print department. This is like a more of a gallery-like space that people have we have prints within the grad studio. So some more shots of the grad studio looking out the window across the street to another institution. And then, but in terms of the program, it's a design program. We're housed in the Division of Fine Arts because when it was founded, we really believed that like being nourished by fine arts was essential to a design practice. And our undergraduate program, students do everything. They do weaving, knitting, print, they do fine arts and design. But in the grad program, it's a design program, but very much nourished by this kind of the fine arts atmosphere and the other courses they can take. So some of the critical things, foundational things in this program is dealing with color. In this case, you're like analyzing color and really beginning to understand color and light through just like breaking something down, an image down, and then developing your own color palettes for particular projects, drawing and painting. And some people aren't drawing and painters, but maybe they do cutouts but using your hand, using different methods to arrive at images and ideas is critical to the program, which then get translated into materiality. In this case, that drawing became the foundation for this woven structure, which is this piece here, this kind of poncho like, but it came through many iterations of drawing, painting, and printing, and then like materiality. Again, how does materiality and pattern that you're doing sort of as exercises then get embedded in your kind of thesis work through knitted pattern and structure and printed, and the combination of those two together. And then iteration is really critical to development of ideas. It's not like you have an idea and you make it. The whole thing is really developing your own personal process through these tools, where you kind of a kind of idea where you're going, but you really understand your ideas through the iterative process, and really ideas emerge in the process. Learning how to think through your ideas and present them. We have a biennial for all the grads, so every 2 years, so when every grad gets this, we have a small show in the grad building, biennial. So this was 2 years ago, and just different ways of presenting the work. But the critique, in every class, and bringing guest critics, those weekly critiques, there's the end of the term critiques, and that's really that's where you think through your ideas and getting feedback, and then go back into the studio and work yourself, right? So that's just a critical, really rich part of this program. Another grad critique in process. And really just hashing out ideas, and they get taken to completely different places. You could say, take this idea, and like that could have been a full thesis, but actually it tumbled into something completely different. So you don't know really where your work's going to take you. You kind of follow the process, follow your ideas, follow what the work's telling you. And best of all is the cohort. Like, we really try to choose a cohort that covers weaving, knitting, say, surface areas, because we ask our students to focus. It's not like you get to do everything. It's only a 2-year program, and it's not an undergrad. So you come in focusing on one of those areas, but then your cohort, and both your, the first and second years together, that's like one of the greatest gifts of the program, having this cohort that you work with within the program, but also, out into your life as you move forward. Those relationships are really critically important. I think that's it. Yeah. So, so that's just a kind of real romp through the program, and some of the, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Carly, before we take questions, like from your student perspective.
Yeah, I've already seen like so many questions pop up. I think Marianne gave like a really good quick cover of everything. Um, the ideas about like color pattern iteration, like it is a very like iterative, directed program. So like there's a lot of iteration, there's a lot of like testing, experimenting within your own practice, and that's something that has been really great for me personally. And like the push conceptually as well. I think that's something that is like makes this program stand apart, is like Marianne said, there's such like a fine art like underlay to everything, even though like maybe it is a design program, so your applications might not be in the gallery, they might not be fine art, but it's like there's all these classes and electives you can take to really build up like a conceptual base to what it is you're trying to do through design.
Yeah. And so, so with the design, obviously there's color, pattern, materiality, and you learn the skills in the area of focus, but concept and context, like, where is this going to live in the world? We really, that's a strong push, because, it's a beautiful fabric, but what's it for? Oh, it's beautiful, but it's so stiff you couldn't wear it. Like, so really all those are constantly being questioned through the iterative process and through the kind of critique. And then research, really building up your own. There's not all research practice. It's really discovering your own, and that's really a big part of the program too. But it's embedded. It's not like a separate course. It's like embedded in all the classes,
Yeah, so I'll dive into the questions if you guys are ready.
Yep.
Great. So, does the surface track involve embroidery and, Applique?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I have no idea what that is. Who
Well,
wants-
I think, so students, there's certain core courses that all the grads have to take, like textile seminar in the fall and spring of first year, in the fall, the second year, there's thesis writing. And then there's studio and seminar electives. Seminar meaning, I mean, there's kind of like more non-studio based classes, right? Sometimes like textile seminar is a studio based class, but we call it seminar. But then within that, it's like where's your research taking you? Like there's fundamental courses. If you come in as a surface person, you almost always take the screen printing class. And then like, well, are you interested in embroidery? Are you interested in, what other courses would you like to take? Or is there something in glass or sculpture that you want to use? So if you want to do applique, we don't have an applique course, but certainly people use whatever techniques they want to propel their work. But yeah.
Alrighty, thank you, Marianne. So next question, what are the widths for those looms? What's the width?
Well, the floor looms, I'm not one of the weavers, but I mean,
I was gonna
looms,
say I can.
huh?
I might be able to help.
Go for it.
The jacquard loom is 54 inches, and we do have like the new one, so you don't have to do like a repeat. Like you can do like a full extended like one go at something, like something engineered. And then most of the floor looms are like 48. I think they range from like 36 to 48. So you get pretty big on those. The Dobby looms are like 16 to 24 inches.
They're really for sampling.
Yeah,
But we do have some big Dobby looms that you can
Dobbies,
actually do
yeah.
a real piece, a few big ones.
Like
Um,
48 inches as
Yeah,
well, I
it's
think. I
not,
would
you
say
don't get those in
42.
class, but like a grad, once they
Mhm.
took a Dobby class, they could use the Dobby, the larger width.
Okay, thank you guys so much. So,
Okay, so I think we already answered the design versus,
yep, answered that, thank you. Are there teaching opportunities within the MFA program besides the teaching assistant position that you mentioned?
yes, well, there's the second year grads, the first year grads usually work in the studio, like more managing certain studios. So they really get their hands on like all the studio, maintenance and such, and working with the techs to make sure, so they really get the grant hands on how the studios work. The second year, people get teaching assistantships, so they're like a teaching assistant within a class that a professor is teaching. And then in the winter session, there's the opportunity to teach a class, sometimes co-teaching, sometimes teaching yourself. It's a 5-week winter session semester, and that's when our grads get an opportunity to teach directly. And in our department, they teach core classes that there's already a syllabus for. They breathe their own life into it, but they're not having to make a syllabus up from scratch. They're working in a weaving, knit, or print class that has an existing syllabus that they can build on.
Mm-hmm. Great. Is it possible to make projects on more than one track? For example, I'm interested in both surface and knitting.
Well, people really need to focus in one, but surface can be, you can get highly elaborate and technical if you want, but it doesn't, you don't have to go from like a floor loom to Dobby to jacquard, which requires, multiple semesters to get to the highest, to the most complex machinery. Although some people might not even, they might be more interested in hand weaving for their projects. But so if somebody really wants to take a surface class in addition to being a weaver, they can, but there's definitely a major focus. But sometimes weavers have taken the silkscreen class, or anybody can take the embroidery class, for instance. I mean, there's not a prerequisite. Whereas with the jacquard, there's a prerequisite for certain things like that. But you can't, like, we don't like weaving and knitting. Yeah, I mean, unless you already have the skill, great, but we're not, people like, well, I'm kind of interested in weaving. It's great, but there's only enough time in a 2-year to focus on one thing and get really good enough at it to propel your ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How much are the yarns? Are they provided by RISD? And are students required to buy all of the materials?
Well, I'll start, but then you can talk about your own experience. You saw the yarn
Yeah.
library, so there's lots of yarns available to use, but and then each of the classes actually buys yarn specifically for their students for that class. However, students sometimes want their own materials that aren't available, like that, they want some specialty yarn, then they have to buy it. When it comes to other supplies outside of yarn, fabrics are printing on, or, tracing paper. No, the students are responsible for their own materials. But like the dye labs are filled with dyes, we have screens. I mean, there's a lot of things that are provided by the department. But then there's a lot of materials students have to buy on their own. But more, Carly, maybe you can talk to that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the department really provides a lot of the facilities and a lot of the technologies and the looms and the knitting machines. And they do all of the yarns that are around. There's so many to choose from. And a lot of the weaving courses, I do know specifically provide everyone with warp yarn, which is the majority of what you're going to be weaving, so you don't have to cover that. But then if there's any specialty materials, which I would say I feel everyone pretty much is using very specific things to their practice. We're all trying to hone in on things, so those types of things, you cover those material costs yourself.
Like you're buying gouache for textile seminar. Well,
Yeah,
you don't provide that, you
that,
provide. So yeah, there's expect to buy materials, but we do provide quite a lot just in the nature of what's here at the department.
Right.
Yeah.
And that goes for every department here. Your materials can be so vastly different from another student. So there's really no, cost. But yes, you're responsible to get those extra materials. So, okay. Can we talk about the program schedule? How much time or is there to learn more and discover versus time spent focusing on your thesis? I think really it's a work-life balance question here. So
Or maybe is the question about other time spent
or
in other departments, like if you wanted to learn something
Yeah.
oh
about
yeah,
that's
electives maybe.
so there's, like I mentioned, there's certain required courses so that's structured there's basically students more or less take 15 credits, which is 5 courses in the fall and spring, and 3 credits during the 5-week winter session. Both semesters is 66 credits total. So 15, 2 years, and then 3, that adds up to 66 credits. So there's certain required, like I said, the textile seminar, fall for 6 credits, spring, this is all on our website, and a 3-credit textile seminar for the first years in spring, and another 9 credits for both in the fall for the second year as well. And then beyond that, it's you choose which classes. If you're in the weaving program, well, it's track, I will say. It depends where you're at. Maybe you have very little experience, so you're starting out at on in the fall on the the second level weaving floor loom, and then move to Dobby in the spring and jacquard in the following fall. Or you might have a lot of experience and jump right into jacquard. So it depends what experience you bring. So how many core classes that you need for your area, and then there's so some of your elective studios and elective seminars are taken up by just core courses for your own, coming out of what your needs are. And then there's also additional ones for liberal arts courses, or grad seminars that are not studio, or some are studios in other departments that are gonna support your work in textiles. So yeah, so Carly, you can maybe talk about some of the courses or how you dealt with that.
Yeah, from my own personal experience, I feel like the first year was more experimental than my second year has been. I feel like thesis is I'm starting to write my thesis, and my spring semester will be fully focused on pulling my thesis project together. So I think your second year gets much more focused, but there's still a lot of exploration to be had within your own practice. But first year for me, there was a lot of experimentation. I've taken some contemporary photo research courses. I've taken Flirting with research, swimming and archives course. I've taken courses that have like aided what I've been doing in textiles, but I would say going back to like um content and context and like having a framework for where you want your work to sit in the world is kind of like the central point of everything. So like even when you are taking those electives, like having in mind what it really is that you want to focus on so that everything you're taking is really aiding to what you're doing in textiles.
Yeah, very well said. That's exactly, yeah. Some people are like, oh, I think I want to take a jewelry course. So I'll be like, why?
No.
Like,
Why?
if it's somehow essential to the way you're thinking about your textile, great. But if it's just something you'd love to learn, you can do it not in grad school. Like you really want everything to really contribute to your greater goals, your goals for the program, right? What your goals are.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Regarding the portfolio, this question is asking, are you interested in looking at some pages of our sketchbook and our portfolio or just finished pieces?
I mean, generally speaking, we want to see finished resolved work, that's the main thing. We do love to see the people paint and draw. I mean, some people don't, and some people, come at it, like I said, they end up doing the other ways of approaching image making or, than observational drawing. But you might have if you don't have finished, drawing paintings, but you do use drawing as a kind of like a way of, you might put a slide in about that, right? So, just to like show your kind of process of arriving at your ideas, if it's an important part of and we hope it does. If it isn't now, it becomes part of your artistic practice, design practice. So yeah, but mostly we're interested in seeing finished pieces, and they might not have anything to do with textile. You might be this amazing painter who decided you want to work with color and imagery in weaving or on print or knit, right? So show us your best work. It doesn't have to be textile. It really is like many people come here, they have no textile experience. Sometimes if they want to do weaving and they don't have any, but they're really a compelling person that we want in the program, we'll say, oh, take some sort of weaving workshops so you have some fundamental thing in the summer, right? But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's your strongest work. It doesn't have to be textiles.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah. Excellent portfolio tips. And for anybody here who still wants a portfolio review, there's still room on our December 6th session. So you should sign up for that.
Talk about portfolio tips. Sometimes different countries have different sort of seem to have different like ideas of what a portfolio should look like. So sometimes people probably are advised for this, or it's the way their school works, but like they'll cram like tiny little pictures, they'll show the whole process in this kind of crunched page. And even when we blow it up and try to go in, we can't really see what's going on. So make it really clear, like show a singular piece so we can really see what we're looking at. Sometimes we can't even tell if this is a virtual, is it a real thing? We can't, I mean, it's just too much on a page. So really having specific images that are singular and not just, and you can have some process images, that's fine, if some, but not like these crammed pages where you're trying to get like the whole process onto some like spreadsheet, we try to communicate that to people because it's sort of one of the methods people do format their portfolios, and we don't find it very effective. It's hard to really understand what's going on. And then if it's put the materials down, what is it? What are we looking at? And if it's a collaboration, be very specific about your part of the collaboration. We think collaborations are great, but let us know what your part of it is, if that's one of your practices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, we have one more portfolio session, just general admissions, portfolio tips. All of what you said is in our do's and don'ts, Marianne. So thanks for reiterating.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's great. And we also have one more portfolio day. I just put the link up. If you wanted to get a review, we help you with just what Marianne was talking about, which is sequencing. Are we going to be able to view the image? If there's text on the screen, get it off the screen, context, what's the material, what's the scale, how do you want it viewed? There are so many sort of things that you don't really think about. And one of the big things I'm seeing this year, Marianne, is that folks are waiting to apply to sort of when their portfolio is finished. But I would encourage everybody here to sign on and start your application so you can log in a slide room and see what it can and cannot do in terms of images before you fine tune all of your images. Kind of have to understand the formatting of slide room. So just wanted to reiterate that point of yours, Marianne. Thank you.
Yeah, so the application process can be held open, like you can start putting, things in that are finished, and that's a good idea.
Exactly. Yep. All right. So next question. Do you work with natural and synthetic fibers or only synthetic fiber based material? Side note, I have found that some 100% wool yarns are actually 80 to 20% polyester.
We work with everything. Students, they could find something in the trash and use it. I mean, it's like nothing is below consideration.
Yeah.
A lot of our yarns are, well, we use both. I mean, there's they both have different, like that one work I showed you where it was the melting yarns, the thermoplastic, synthetic, and then wool. It required, like, so that when they do post finishing, the yarns are subjected to heat purposefully to do something different, or somebody might put a synthetic and then a wool and then shrink it like in a hot, like almost like a felting process, so that the wool shrinks but the synthetics don't, to get a textured surface. So anyway, we use everything essentially. Some students are very committed to sustainable practice and want to use 100% natural, and that's their prerogative. But in our studios and in design at the world at large, they use everything, and so we use everything. But we encourage people that are committed to that to like find resources and think through that process for themselves too.
There is also, I'll just add, there's a fibers and dyeing class that all the grads take in their spring semester of their first year. And it focuses like purely on material and dyeing processes. So like you'll learn a lot about what, like which yarns do what, and like the difference between cellulose, protein, like synthetic fibers. It's very in depth, and you start to learn a lot about material.
Yeah, do you, I know they do it with the undergrads, but do you also spin fibers in that class?
Yeah. You'll like spin yarn from scratch, like you make your own yarn.
And that's not to make it to do a project. I mean, although some of our students do that are,
yeah.
But I mean, it's more for you to really understand what that kind of, what a wool does, or what a mohair does, or what, when you twist together a fine twist, a hard twist, you really can understand how yarns work. So it's more for everyone to understand the total structure of materiality of yarn. And then they also cover natural dyeing, and we have a dye garden. So mostly it's from our undergrads. I mean, not just textiles, it's across the school. So if you're really interested in that, there's resources within the department and school, that even a dye garden, right? But then in the lab, it's primarily, acid dyes, MX dyes, and you do learn how to use those.
Thank you, guys. It's great. We have a lot of questions here, so we'll just kind of keep going. Are there classes offered to learn how to use electronic looms, the Dobby, the Jacquard, at the beginning of the MFA program, or is it up to the student to do that? I'm coming from UMass and Mass Art. Unfortunately, we didn't have access to electronic looms. I have 14 years of weaving experience, and I'd like to learn electronic looms as soon as possible.
Yeah, so if you have weaving experience, no one gets put into an automatic pilot situation. If you have tons of weaving experience, you don't need to be in the weaving, floor loom class. You might say, I'm going to go, I want to learn Dobby because that's computer interface, and it's 24 harness. And then that leads directly to Jacquard. So you would probably, rather than skip directly to Jacquard, not Dobby, but it depends on your experience. Maybe you've done tons of Dobby and you don't need that either, and you can just go right to Jacquard. More likely it would be like take the Dobby course, which is again computer interface. We also have TC1 and 2. We don't have a course for it. It's integrated into other courses, but you can learn how to use it and then have access to, that's like also hand woven, but it's a Jacquard loom. So you can do all the things you can do on a regular industrial Jacquard loom, but it's by hand. For ours are narrow, so it's more for experimentation and research. I mean, because it's narrow. But it's really exciting to have those looms in our department. Again, there's not a whole class around it, but it's available for students in weaving to use.
Thank you. All right, so thesis. Do I have to have a thesis proposal or idea when applying to RISD, or is it something I can develop within the first year?
we don't want anybody having a thesis like, you know, I mean, you can have ideas, but we really hope it is profoundly changed through, you know, being in the department and doing your own research within all these new skills you're developing and the cohort you're in and the conversations you're having and the classes you're taking. And so we don't ask people what their ideas for thesis are. We don't, if you have some, that's your own business, but that's certainly not a requirement. We're not looking for somebody with great ideas. We're just like, the ideas emerge in the process. Even, so Carly, you can talk about your own experience with first year as your ideas are emerging and still emerging, right?
Yeah. Yeah, my mind has just like been exploded while I've been here. So it's like, even if you think you come in with something that you like, obviously there are through lines I have found, like, even if your ideas have conceptually evolved like so much, like there are still those core things about what make your practice, but it's like you can come in with those ideas, but yeah, they're basically just gonna get like blown up in the best way. Like, along with all the research and like all the other electives that you can take, like I've learned so much about not just like, I mean, a lot of my own personal research like has to do with like place and memory, but like I've done a lot of research like into like the phenomenology aspect of those things. And like there's a lot of theories and a lot of like things that you can really bring in, that it doesn't have to just be about what you're making, but it can also be about really expanding like how you speak about your work and how you think about your work and where you see it sitting in the world.
We see, I mean, you know, being a designer artist, it's like a tool for being in the world. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
not just to make a thing that you can stick on a shelf. It's like, how am I in the world, engaging with the world right now? So yeah, you don't want to be locked into ideas. It's like you want your own practice to actually be your tool of investigation, as opposed to having an idea and now you know how to kind of knock it out. Really, that's what we cultivate in the department as a kind of, so you're kind of open until finally it gets clearer and clearer, and then it becomes very clear, but it's really, even in the final semester, people are still, it's kind of, they know what they're doing,
Yeah.
they have a thesis project, but it becomes clearer and clearer right till the end. That's how it works. I mean, that's how, yeah. Would you say that's true
Yeah.
for you, Carly? I mean, I know you're not in your.
No, yeah, I would say so. I think things get clearer and clearer, but it's also you just learn more and more. So it's really a great, I think this has just been an amazing like jumping off point, or like it really is just like time to really figure out your practice and like really discover and hone in on like those design principles of color and pattern, while also like expanding in your research and in your practice and how you iterate and like where you really want to see your work in the world and how you want to speak about your work also. Like I think I've gained so many skills just about speaking, like um gives you a lot more language to use, which is like, you know, it's a great like confidence going out into the world and like being able to, you know, have your feet in the ground about something and be like, this is what I want to do. But even now, yeah, like I'm writing my thesis, but it's still a moment in time. Like it's still like this is going to be a life practice. Like this is going to be like a like really amazing like foundation to like continue work outside of RISD as well.
There's almost not any real end. You're never gonna really like figure anything
Yeah, like
out.
we're all
You're gonna
artists and
realize
designers.
right, you're just gonna realize there's more to be explored.
But there is a thesis exhibition, so there's
But
a
there,
call meeting, and
yeah,
deadlines are always good, right? So
Yeah.
you kind of keep it open as long as you can, and then where you really, then it's like you're really have to just decide, and all the things you're not using
yeah,
all of a sudden, they're there for you to use later. Nothing is
hmm,
a waste, right? But suddenly at some point, like you just have to fix it. But we postpone that till need it, but then it happens, and part of it is that your thesis writing is really helps your conceptual development. It's in dialogue with the work. It's not, you're not describing what
yeah,
you've done. It's actually a investigatory process, and it helps the visual and making process. And they're in tandem over the full second year, which is, I find,
hmm,
kind of really amazing process for.
yeah, yeah. And
Um,
even though it is expansive, it's like also very focused.
mhm. So we have about 10 minutes left, a little more than 10 minutes left. We're gonna end this right at 11:55. But I did want to jump around on the questions a little bit and look for some that we really haven't talked about. And this one is going back to the portfolio. Does it need to be focused on the track, as you mentioned, knit, surface, weaving? Can I include finished pieces of all different types, or all three of the tracks? Do the projects that apply, or do I choose only the projects that apply to the track that I want?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, because you probably wrote this question before, I mentioned that you might be a painter and have no textile experience. We want to see your best work. And we also want to see something cohesive and send, not like, oh, I knitted a sweater and then I, did this, took this, weaving workshop, or we don't just want like, I can do a little bit of everything. It's not like we really want to see that you have, your best work. It doesn't have to be in the area that you're applying to. Like, again, it could be completely, we have somebody who was an architecture student, but somehow their ideas were really thinking through weaving and they're in the program. It's like they took some workshops before they got here, but they were showing us their architectural work. So it's the best work, compelling work, and it should be cohesive as opposed to like a smattering of everything you've ever done. That's not what we're interested in.
Yeah, thank you for that. All
I
right.
just want to answer this really quick question. Do we make our own dyes, or is everything pre-made? Nothing is pre-made. If you mix your own pigments, you mix your own dyes. Yeah, we don't have pre-made stuff. And we teach you how to do it. It gives you lots of agency, understanding how dyes work, and also to do whatever you want with them. So yeah.
Yeah, the actual powders are like there, or like the actual bottles of like primary colors of pigment are there, but it's like, so you don't have to make the actual dye powder, but it's like you're gonna use that to like make your own color.
Yeah. Great. Another question about materials. Does the pattern printer print seamless designs on wallpaper as well? Is there a separate printer to print wallpaper? Is the printer coordinated with the textile software so that the design going on fabric or paper is already seamless?
Wallpaper, when people want to print on wallpaper, which we've done like for exhibitions, print it. There's a the print design center that serves the whole college has a plotter that can print on paper that we use as wallpaper, right? But in our department, our wide format, we used to have a wide format paper printer, but it just was so much maintenance, we decided to just we gave it to the print design center, and they've upgraded theirs since then. But but you can definitely print wallpaper. We embrace people that are, wanting to think through wallpapers, definitely part of the textile industry and design field. So yes, but it's done across the street at the our RISD print center.
Let's see here. Over the past few years, how many students apply for the textiles program versus how many get in? I think the larger question here is, how big is the program?
It's pretty competitive. We only have 6 spots per year. So 6 in the first year, 6 in the second year, for a total of 12 cohort. So it's small. I mean, but they're also that small cohort takes classes with their undergrads. When we have a Jacquard class, we don't have with 2 students taking Jacquard, we don't have a class just for grad students. So the bigger departments, more like 100 total students, or so it's a very vibrant department. But the grad cohort is 6, so it's competitive. I don't know what the percentage is. I don't know. I don't off the top of my head. I don't think in percentages, but it's competitive.
Yep, I actually have the last few years here. Just the number of students that are applying is small, but the number of students we're admitting is also small, so that just makes it quite competitive within the program. So this past year we had 50 applications. Year before that, 51. Year before that, 40. So anywhere between 40 and 50, I think, is a safe number to think about how many students are applying. Of course, as we've been discussing this, you can understand why we make you apply to one program, because each of our programs are so different, and just the minutia of how the expertise of each discipline that we have here, the depth of the expertise within that one department, right? So, I think that the people that are applying here are very much in their niche of textiles and the kind of way that they are making things, and know that they want to apply to textiles. So, and of course, that's another reason why you're here today. So, moving on. How far of a walk are the studios from the building where most of the looms are? Just curious. Maybe we can talk about Providence too, because it's just so small. Everything's walkable,
Yeah.
pretty much, but
I could talk about like I live in an area called Fox Point this year, which is like a neighborhood behind College Building area in the Brown campus, and it takes me like 20 minutes to walk to College Building. That's where all the looms are, unless there are also looms in our like I'm in the studio space right now, but there are also like a few looms in here for specifically just for us for grads. Um, and then from College Building to CIT, it's like what, like 5-10 minute walk. So everything's pretty, yeah, Providence is very small, but like in the best way.
yeah, Marianne.
Yeah, well, I can't really add to that. Between CIT where the grads are, like Carly said, when you're taking a class, you have a loom in the loom room in College Building. If you're taking a class, and like if you start with the floor or the Dobby loom, you're taking a class, you're using those. But then you also have the looms. There's a fair amount of looms in the CIT studio and knitting machines, manual knitting machines. You always have to go to the College Building area to do the industrial looms because they're run by technicians. The students don't have to learn how to run an industrial equipment. So there's appointments made and all that scheduled in. So yeah, everything's, it's pretty close. It's a nice little brisk 5-6 minute walk to, the most 10 if you're just sauntering between the main building and the CIT studio.
Yep. Great, thank you. All right, can we talk about if there are any internship or placement opportunities?
We have an incredibly robust career center. And they're like, say, once you're a student, you go on the website, you can see all the internship listings, job listings, once you're leaving and looking, or once you're an alumni, you have access to all that. But we have people in the Career Center that really know textiles a lot. They will work with you one-on-one. We actually don't absolutely require, but we really strongly encourage, if you haven't worked in the textile field, that between your first and second years, you do an internship, because you learn a lot that you can't learn in school. It's not like the faculty don't know those things, but it's not something you can teach. You have to be in there and understanding how it works, right? So and that's also, the more internships you do, the more networking you do in the field. So everyone's path is different, but we really encourage internships. And we have the faculty that teach here have been in the field a long time. We have a lot of our alumni in the field. So we also, pair people up with people or see, oh, they'd be great with that. And maybe that person can take an intern, maybe they can't. But we have a lot of connections in the field. So yeah, internships are really highly encouraged.
Yep, and we actually just had a session with the Career Center yesterday. It was a very thorough presentation with the Career Center. So you can find that on our YouTube playlist for open house. So I'll go ahead and post that in the chat. Let's see here. Same kind of question about professional development. Let's see, just looking here.
There's also different, depending what your trajectory is, like some people are interested in, say, sustainable design, et cetera. So we have the research office we work year after year with Hyundai, and they always have a class in the fall and then a class in the spring. You don't have to do both, but maybe you have to take the class in the fall if you want to be in the spring. One is more liberal arts or like context, and one is more like hands-on. And then they have grant money in the summer to do. So some of our students, even grads, have taken that and then had a pretty good job in the summer. One of our students who just got a job at Nike, they were doing all this biomaterials and very interested in sustainability, but then in their program, they were working more with jacquards and design practice. And they were thinking, they were almost doing two separate things. But they just got a job that's I can't believe it. It just married both. They were hired as lead design and sustainability at Nike. So everything they've done, all the, are like, they found a job that it's coming together. When they thought like, I had to choose one or the other, but those opportunities to work in that class and be like real world, like the studio was involved in like a Nike project, so it was kind of real world, even though it's very, they're looking for high ideas, not like everything being able to be made today. It's like sort of looking to the future. But then the summer job through Nike was like really pivotal too. Yeah, so there's lots of different opportunities at RISD for that sort of engagement.
Yeah, and kind
Outside
of,
the department, it's kind of at the larger school level.
yeah, and that kind of answers the next question is, can students take textile classes and elective from other departments? So
Yeah.
we'll use the departments, yes. Yeah, and then the rest of the questions we kind of already got to. Again, I would encourage all of you guys to check out the Career Center recording from yesterday, which I'm posting in the chat now. And then the other questions have to do with, you know, wanting to pursue all three different kinds of tracks at the same time.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah.
The students come with all kinds of experience, and like you can bring whatever you want to your work, but in terms of people aren't taking weaving courses, identity courses, and service courses. That's what they do in undergrad. At grad, we're looking at for focus, for you to become, well, leave here being really an expert in an area. But if you say you already know how to print and you decide to be on the weaving track and you're printing on top of your weavings, I mean, or knitting, engaging with knitting on top of your weavings, no one's going to stop you from doing that. It's just like in terms of taking courses, and it is about a focus. I mean, we want expansiveness, but we think of within the, if you have a narrow focus and then when you go deep in that, it can be very expansive. If you're really expansive, you get no depth. So, I mean, you have your whole life to do kinds of work, but in the program, we try to get focused so that you can go really deep. And when you go deep, it's very expansive. Like but yeah, so that's our kind of philosophy, but no one's going to stop you from using techniques that you know and integrating into your practice, of course. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much that we have to end here, but I appreciate Marianne and Carly for taking the time to be with us today. And hopefully we'll see you guys Friday at our in-person open house. Have a great day.
And also, if you're not able to come Friday for the in-person, well, Carly will be giving a tour of the college building and the CIT, and I'll be meeting with everybody first. But if you can't, which you might not be nearby, feel free, if there's still questions that haven't got answered, to reach out to me, you know, by email.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm on the website with my, you know, all my contact information.
Great. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Carly.
Thanks, Molly. Thanks, Carly.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming.